Hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a bunch of cards. I made a whole bunch of floral cards using 3 different Altenew Craft a Flower die sets. I did a bunch of ink blending. Used a press plate, die cut sentiments, splatter for everyone. So, we're going to walk through it all. I'll show you guys how I did it and some tips and tricks along the way. As always, everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what keeps the lights on, helps pay the bills, enables me to keep bringing out content. And yeah, let's get into making these cards. Okay, so the first set I'm using is the Craft a Flower Prairie Roses die set, which is just so pretty. All of my florals and greenery and everything from these sets, I die cut from just Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock. And I did a bunch of die cutting. I didn't even realize how much I had done until I opened the trays quite some time later to start assembling cards, and I was like, oh, I did a lot, especially this set. This set I die cut, I don't even know how many multiples of, because one, I love it. I love Prairie Roses, and it's so pretty. So I stuck the die cut pieces to my ultra sticky mat here, and I'm using Fresh Lemon and Pinkalicious inks along with Altenew's little flat blending brushes to add my ink, starting with the yellow, keeping it towards the very center, and blending it out, and then bringing that Pinkalicious in from the tips of the petals and then dragging it in. And yeah, they basically glow, especially my photos at the end, because yellow makes cameras go weird, at least mine anyway. And then for all the little stamens, I used those 2 yellows. And then for the flower centers, I used a fresh leaf. And I'll show in a bit, but basically when I did really get going with the ink blending, I did everything at once. So I did all the blooms or the parts for the petals, I would stick on the grip mat and blend with those 2 colors, the yellow and the pink. And then I did all the flower centers and all of the stamens for the flowers, and then all of the greenery. I worked in those batches. That way I didn't have to clean my mat all the time in between, something like this, with all the greenery. Did all the greenery and then stuck all the next pieces of greenery and just kept repeating. So I didn't have to keep wiping off my mat so that I'm not getting, pink into green and creating mud and that sort of thing. So for the greenery, I used 3 shades for this, and same thing. I did the lighter shade, towards the tips of the leaves, and then just kept using a darker and then darkest shade towards the base of the leaves and the stems. And I'm not worried about my blends, especially on the greenery. The blooms being the focus, I still, worked a little harder, and yet at the same time, it doesn't need to be perfect. Your blend does not need to be perfect. The Altenew's Fresh Dye inks, they smooth out as they dry. They soften a bit, which means they dry back and they get a little lighter, and they smooth out as they dry. So your blends just don't need to be perfect. Slap that color on. We're good to go. So yeah, I had a pile. I had so many die cuts. This is that little tray there. There's just a little ceramic or porcelain watercolor tray. I picked that tip up from Kathy Zilski, and yeah, I was using it to hold all of my die cut pieces, because especially for this little Prairie Roses set, I had a bajillion of them. I don't even remember how many I die cut. It was a lot. So all of the pieces in all of these sets have the little keyhole system. So it makes it super easy to assemble these, because you just line up the keyhole. And I didn't show the actual dies, but I've shown it in other videos. But the dies themselves are also clustered together for each flower. So it's that one die does all the petals for one flower. And then all the little add-ons, the stamens and the centers, those have the little keyholes to match, and they're different shapes. So there's 3 different blooms in this set. So then there's 3 different little keyhole shapes for them. So it just makes it easier as well, because you'll know just by looking at it, like one's a little arrow shape, one's a little keyhole shape, one's a little sort of like T shaped. They vary them depending on what you're doing. And then depending on the set, some of them will also have numbers debossed right next to the keyhole. I honestly can't remember if this set has it or not, but this one was definitely like the easiest to assemble. Sometimes if there isn't space for numbers, they'll do little dots. I've noticed that on a few sets. It'll have like 1 dot for layer 1, 2 dots for layer 2, 3 dots, etc. So it just kind of depends. And then of course there's always the layering guide on the back of the packaging too that lays it all out. And then I have found over the last little while that I will go in sometimes on their website, like if the layering guide, because if there's like a lot of pieces, whatever, and my eyes are getting old, I'll go on the website and get the layering guide off there, and that way I can like expand it on my computer screen so it's like nice and big. So after I assembled that set, I set it all aside just in a tray. Then I'm using, this is the Craft a Flower Gladiolus layering die set. I would say this one was the most complicated, definitely the most complicated 3, but yet at the same time not difficult. This is where, and I've shown this in other videos and talked about this, I will take all the die cut pieces with layering die set, and as you can see, I'm like basically assembling it just on my desk, like just the pieces of cardstock. That just gives me that visual, and it's like, oh, because like a set like this, it's not difficult. It's just the pieces look funny on their own. And it's like, what on earth? But then once you lay it all out, it's like, oh, okay, like this is the petal that goes here. This is this, et cetera, et cetera. And then once I've got that, it makes it easier. And it especially helps when I want to do things like this ink blending. If you want to save that step, you can just die cut everything from color cardstock. You know, they give all the color suggestions. And I always just like trying that first, like doing kind of similar to what is shown on the packaging, just to, again, get your brain to kind of like, oh, okay, this goes here, this makes sense, you know, and then after that, do whatever works for you. So I took just one flower here, and I'm doing the same thing as I did with the Prairie Roses set, as I'm only using 2 shades. I'm using the Soft Lilac and Midnight Violet, doing the light shade towards the base of the petals and just blending that on. And then I'll take that Midnight Violet and blend it from the tips of the petals towards the base. And yeah. Oh, and this set also, 2 of the flowers in the Gladiolus set have options, which look confusing at first because it's like, what do you mean? But that's also why I was laying out the pieces at first, and it's like, oh, you can either fold over the little tab for the final petal, or there's just 2 pieces that you can just layer. So it's just options. That's it. So super, super simple. So then there's also the little piece for the stamens, and then the little, like, I guess decorative, like the tips of the stamens, those I die cut from black cardstock, and we'll get to that when I start assembling. And then for this greenery, again, I use 3 shades just cause. And with the greenery, this is, especially with this set, you can really see, I just slap that ink on. It doesn't matter. It's going to smooth out just completely fine. It's just going to smooth out. Like, you're not going to be able to tell. So I just slap that color on, just like so. And I did the same thing with this set as the previous. I did everything in groups. So I did all the petals, and then I did all the stamens, and then I did all the greenery. And then for assembling, same thing. There's little keyholes. They are shaped for each different bloom. So there's a different shape for each one. So it's, you know, pretty easy. And the dies are clustered together so that you just know, you know? So assembling everything with liquid glue. And for little things like these little ends to the stamens, there's a technical term for that, but I can't. You guys, it's too early. I haven't had coffee yet. Reverse tweezers for the win, you know, and like the perfect picker to pick up little pieces and press them into place. Things like that. Always game changer. So with this one, once we get up to this point, this is where you have the 2 options. You have you could do this final layer and then that piece over top to cover it, or you can take this one and you just fold over, I just call it a little tab, and that's what lines up with the keyhole. So it's just options. So I ink blended and did everything because I'm a crazy person, but more so because I wanted to see it with, myself. And it's like, I don't know why I like the fold over tab a lot. I don't know. It's a weird little like thing where I'm just like, ooh, look at me. I figured it out. So that's what I used. Yep. And yeah, these come together. Super simple. Once you do one, it's like, okay, this makes sense. This is where this goes. This is where this goes. And you just like work your way through. Now for these, I kept all the colors the same. Like for all of the Prairie Roses, I did one color combo. For all of these, I did one color combo. For all the next, I did one color combo. But obviously you can do whatever you want. And especially Gladiolus. They come in every color imaginable. I love Gladiolus. I love them. In our climate here in Saskatchewan, they have to be dug up every fall and then stored in like cold storage for the winter and then replanted every year. I have never bothered to do that. I do not have the energy, but maybe someday I will do it because they're such beautiful flowers. I love them. So maybe I'll be able to like muster up the energy because that's the last thing I want to do in the fall is like go out and start digging up bulbs. Anyway, this one has 2 keyholes. And at first I was like, I'm sorry, what? But again, it makes sense. Following the guide and you do it once and it was like, oh, okay. It all makes sense. And the 2 different keyholes is just so that you line things up properly. And as you can see, once you just started hearing it, it just comes together. I don't know. These things fascinate me because it's like my brain does not work like this. I could not imagine like designing sets like this. My brain's like, nope. So I adhered everything together. And then we've got these fabulous little Gladiolas. And then there's 2 little buds that attach to 2 of the like greenery pieces. And then it layers all up just like so. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, one of the things that, especially when making like multiple, like I said, I wasn't planning on making this many cards. I originally was only going to make like 2 cards, 3 cards, maybe. I made 10 because I had just a pile of die cuts. Because all I did was I did all my die cutting first. It's like you have a chunk of time. It's like just did a bunch of die cutting and then put all the pieces into like trays for later. And then I sat down and did ink blending. One set at a time, And then when they were done and all blended, then I would sit down and assemble everything. You work in batches. And the nice thing about doing all the die cutting ahead of time is the next time you go to sit down, it's like, ooh, the die cutting's done. Now we can do the fun stuff, like add the color. Or if you've just die cut color cardstock, it's like, ooh, all I got to do is sit down and assemble everything. It's like, it makes things work a lot smoother. It makes things come together a lot easier when you just work in like batches like that, or as Tim Holtz calls it, like compartmental making. It works. It works. And that's basically how I've always done like larger projects, or if I'm just doing a lot of die cutting, a lot of this, a lot of that, you do it all in just batches. It's like, if I'm going to be sitting on my die, with my die cut machine, I'm just going to die cut. Just grabbed a couple sheets of cardstock and die cut all the pieces. And then had all my supplies out, did all the ink blending, and then put out my mat, grabbed my glue, assembled everything. If that makes sense. So this final one that I'm now working on is the Craft a Flower Asters layering die set. This one I went with blues. And this one I used all 4 shades, all 4 shades from this quad because I could. I could have just done it with 2, honestly, and it would have looked fabulous. Just use the lightest shade and like the darkest shade. I think it would have looked fabulous. And with this one, I did the light colors towards the tips all the way to the darkest at the very base this time. And really simple. Again, just slap the color on because these will just smooth out as they dry and they're going to look fabulous. Like, you just can't go wrong with this. But again, if you're strapped for time or just ink blending is not your thing, you can 100% die cut from color cardstock. You can mix it up a bit and like, do some of the pieces from like specialty cardstocks, things like that. Sky's the limit. So same thing with the greenery, stuck all those pieces on there, slapped on that ink. Legit, like, That's one of the things I love about these ink formulas is I just don't need to stress about it. I used to a lot because it was just like it can take a long time to get, a soft blend, a smooth blend. And I used to way back in the day, way back in the day, I used to find it extremely frustrating because it was so time consuming. By the time I would get a decent blend, my arm would just be aching, Now it's like, no, you literally can just slap that ink on. Especially once it's layered up really well, it will smooth out as it dries. Heck, it smooths out at the more layers of ink you add, and it just does its thing. So just try not to overthink it. And this is coming from an overthinker. So I just worked my way through and added all that color to all of the greenery. And then same thing. This die set comes together like super, super easily. You can see all the different little keyholes. One's a triangle, one's like a keyhole shape, one's an arrow, and then one's like a T shape. They use whatever shapes, depending on how many different patterns or designs or whatever in the die set. Each one gets its own little designated keyhole. So it just works. It just works. So did all the little flower centers and then assembly. And this one was just super simple. The numbers are debossed on there. You can't really see it on the screen, but you can see it in real life. And then just layer 1, 2, 3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, that's the other thing too. I always recommend, again, the very first time using it, like do it as suggested, just to, get your brain wrapped around. It's like, okay, this is how it's supposed to come together. Once you've got it figured out, do whatever you want. Alternate the layers, add more layers. They're your dies, it's your cardstock. You can do what you want. So especially with one like this, you could add die cut double and add more layers, really fill it out, make it super, super, fluffy. I think that would be really fun. I just did everything kind of as is, but that's definitely an option. And another thing I really liked about this set in particular is and Altenew does this it does it with all of them, really. These floral sets is how each bloom is different. Like it's like a different orientation or sort of a different angle. They're not just like 3 of the same. Would still be pretty, but it's nice having that variety. 1, it literally looks better. And 2, it creates a bit more interest when you're like laying things out and moving things around, stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you're not working with pieces that are the exact same. And I really like that. So got all those like main blooms assembled. And then this one attaches to this little like kind of branch basically, but you could also just use it on its own. Like it doesn't have to be attached to this. I attached it to it because I was like, this is just adorable and I love it. But yeah, you could skip that if you want and just assemble a bloom as is, and it could just be tucked into whatever floral arrangement. So after all my die cutting, for my backgrounds, I'm using, this is the new Essential Textures Fine Wood Grain Press Plate. This thing is a beast. Oh, 1, it's wood grain. This one I already know I will use a lot. Wood grain works with like everything. It's just a perfect way to add texture and like a bit of like a basic pattern. Also, this one's 5x7. Like this, it's a beast. It is a huge plate, which for those that like to make larger cards, fabulous. Like, I will link at the very end of this video to my playlist that I have with all the videos I've done using the Better Press system and press plates, because I love them. I love them. And things like this is my favorite way to use them. Is I put the plate on my Better Press. I'm using Neenah Desert Storm cardstock, and I just attached it with the Altenew like tape runner. Just something really, just a little bit of it light tack. That tape runner is like permanent, but just a smidge of it on the clear plate just to hold the cardstock in place. And then I inked up the plate with one of Altenew's fresh dye inks. And I've talked about this in many Better Press videos. This is one of my favorite inks to use with the press plates because, 1, the ink pads are felt, so you can like press them. You can use foam ink pads on this. You just have to have a really light hand. It's a bit more difficult to apply the ink because you don't want to mush ink like into all the little grooves, things like that. And I ink up the plate. I put the clear plate on top of the Better Press, run it through my Platinum 6 dye machine. It presses everything together, and the impression is just, it's so good. The only thing with using just regular cardstock is you don't get that texture that you normally get from press plates, to get that like really impressed like texture, that feel, you need something thicker, like watercolor paper or the better press paper, etc. But honestly, I don't care. Every once in a while, it's really nice because it's just like, oh, and it's something you can't see in videos. You can only see it in real life and feel it in real life. But yeah, I love it. I love it. And then I inked around the perimeter with a small blending brush and that Rocky Shore ink. That also just adds a bit of depth, you know? And I did all of that. That was my, next I was running everything through with the butter press, and I did all the backgrounds. And then I did all the inking around the edges. You work in batches. It makes things go faster and a bit smoother. And then once I had those all done, that's when I just sat down and assembled all these. And this is where I ended up with 10 card fronts. So some of them I did, I followed the front of the packaging and assembled them in the way they're shown on there. And then all the other ones, it was like, I just kind of mixed and matched and did my own thing just to mix it up a bit. So yeah, that one on the top, left of the screen there, that's where I kind of followed the packaging. I still tucked in a few extra of those die cut leaves because with the Prairie Roses set, you get a lot of greenery. I love it. And those individual greenery dies, I was like, ooh, these would work with so many things because you can't go wrong with leaves. They work with everything. So yeah, I followed it with that one. And then the other ones, I just kind of did my own thing. And, just also to mix it up a bit so that I don't get bored. So assembled everything with just glue. You could also, if you really wanted to build dimension, pop things up with like the instant dimension foam tapes, cut it into little pieces, things like that. I found with these, it wasn't necessary because there was already so much dimension with just the die cut florals and the greenery and like just all the layers of everything. But that's always an option too if you really want to step it up, is to pop things up with foam tape. So with the Gladiolus, I basically did the same thing with these. I did 2 of them the way they were meant to be. And then the final one, I just had a couple extra blooms because I was die cutting scraps by that point and just used what I had on hand. So assembled all of these as well, and they're just fun. They're just so pretty. So yeah, and you could do these in any color. I love the purples, but I was like, red Gladiolus are gorgeous. I'm not even a red person, but like red Gladiolus are gorgeous. You do a whole rainbow of these, love them. So that's how they were intended to be. And then this final one, I just had some like greenery bits and then 2 of the blooms. So this one, I just kind of switched it up and did whatever. Just tuck them in wherever, whatever works. So once I'm kind of happy with where I've kind of got my placement, then I can just start adhering everything down and tucking in the little greenery bits here and there. And then once I've got these ones done, I'll finish off with my, with the Asters die set and those final card fronts. So once I get all of these assembled, then we're going to get to the splatter. But we got to get to the Asters first. So got the Gladiolus adhered. And then the Asters, same thing. With this set, I didn't do any of it the way the packaging shows. If you do it the way the packaging shows, you kind of need to do more of either just a larger card. All of these would work. If you like doing larger cards like 5x7, etc., these would work perfectly for that. And that background press plate. But with the Asters, the way on the packaging and just the size of the dies, you'd either need to go like landscape or just a larger card. So instead, I just kind of separated things, and then I was like, ooh, I can get 3 card fronts out of this instead of 4, or instead of 2, because I had die cut just twice this die set. And by mixing things up a little bit, I was able to just stretch it into 3 card fronts. So that works too. So once everything was assembled, splatter, a lot of it. So I put white gouache on my little palette, and I just put 2 card fronts at a time into my splat box, thinned out the white gouache with some water, and then heavily splatter this over the florals. And I would do 2 at a time, and then I would take them out of the splat box and just set them aside to dry, and then just rinse and repeat until I had all of the card fronts. So same thing. I do this in just as a batch on its own. So, because while the gouache is out and all the things, just get to it. So rinse and repeat, stick the next 2 card fronts into the splat box, splatter, pull those out, set it aside, go on to the next two until all of them were splattered, and I've got card fronts sitting all over my space so that they can dry, which doesn't take long. This white gouache dries pretty quickly. So while everything was drying, I die cut my sentiments, and I pulled out an oldie but goodie, the Timeless Sentiments die set, and I just die cut them from scraps of white and black cardstock. And then to adhere them to the card fronts, I just used a combination of some thin foam squares and some liquid glue. And while I was doing like all my die cutting, I like kind of planned out. It was like, okay, there's going to be this many with this sentiment, this many with this sentiment. So I pulled out a couple different stamp sets, which I'll show at the end for the insides of the cards, you know, just to finish everything off. And another thing I had done was when I was pressing all of the backgrounds with the Woodgrain press plate, I also pressed just a couple pieces of the Desert Storm cardstock with that press plate. And these I'm cutting down into strips to add to the inside of the cards, just to finish it off, just to give it that little extra something. But this could also be its own like design, like cutting it into strips like this so you have like planks, you know? That always works too. You can't go wrong with the Woodgrain texture. So yeah, I just cut them into 1-inch strips and then adhered them to the insides of my cards. And all of my card bases are top folding A2 white note cards. And I stamped the sentiments onto the insides with Altenew's Obsidian black ink. And yeah, like I said, once these are done, I will show the stamp sets I pull all the sentiments from. So I had assembled, like adhered all those strips. I'd stamped all the insides in, you know, one batch. Assembled, like adhered all the strips, and then adhered the card fronts, and that finished off all these cards. So for some of the cards, I used sentiments from the Lovely Rose Peony stamp set. That's a Build-A-Garden set. And then I used sentiments from the Peruvian Lily stamp set. Another fabulous. Oh, these florals are amazing. And then the final sentiments, I used the Craft Your Life Magnificent Magnolias. I pulled a sentiment from that one. And there we go. So just a variety of florals, a variety of occasions. I've got thank you and friend and hello. The hugs ones that were more kind of like with the thought of sympathy cards. So yeah, all these colors, all these florals. This was a lot of fun. A lot of work, but spread over many sessions and so much fun. So, like I mentioned, I will have links to everything I used in the description box below the video, so you can just expand that and check that out if you are interested. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton and I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!